You can only launch the token once, and then either you do it properly or you do it wrongly. It's very difficult to actually rectify this problem if you have basically done it wrongly.
Crypto is moving up. Is it a good time to launch a token?
Last year in the bear market, everybody would tell you, yeah, but now it's really difficult to launch a token. Nobody was launching token. May, June, July, everybody was launching token. Then they said, yeah, but now it's way too much competition. You can't launch token now. So we spent a lot of time on token design. And of course, what is the utility of the token? I think at the end we had a tokenomics deck, maybe 100 pages.
What are the typical mistakes that you have seen in tokenomics or the launch of the token? Hi, this is Violeta Chekan, or VC. Indeed, I am a venture capitalist. I have 12 years in startups and early stage investing. And this is season 2 of Web2+1 with VC show. And each episode we have top entrepreneurs and leaders in blockchain and crypto space. And today we have Gerald Heydenreich, who is a serial entrepreneur, also investor, and co-founder of EtherMail. And also he is leading Barcelona blockchain network, which is a venture studio focusing on Web3 and AI. And he's also had already 2 exits previously. So he's a serial entrepreneur, so many built startups, and also 1 startup being acquired by Amazon. So hi, Gerald, welcome to the show.
Hi, Violeta, very nice meeting you. And hello, everybody, nice being here.
Last week you just came from Token 2049. So what is in your mind after this conference?
Yeah, very good. I mean, we were there in December, I think in June it was in Dubai. That was actually when there was a big storm. So that was quite exciting at the time. This time in Singapore, there was also a bit of rain, but still it was very good, very well organized, as Token 2049 always is great to be. A lot of people, 10,000 plus people, even bigger, a lot bigger than actually Dubai was. Very high quality of people. I was very much positively surprised again about the quality of the people on Token 2049. It's always great to meet and mingle with the people on site. But I mean, of course, people are always saying, hey, listen, we are still in a bear market. I personally believe we're not really in a bear market. The problem is, in my opinion, I have a bit of contrarian opinion on this one. And it's the advantage of being around a little bit longer. So in 2001, actually, so a long time ago, there was actually the internet hype, and things went up like this. And then, of course, they fell significantly. And then the following years, it was always a little bit up and a little bit down and so on. But what really happened during those years is that the great projects were built during this time. For example, Amazon between 2001 and 2008 grew just steadily every year it was just growing. And I think people in this industry tend to forget that there was a unique moment in time in this industry where there was a peak, there was a big of hype, and everybody is looking back at this and thinking it will be exactly like this again. But they're forgetting that actually what's happening is a lot of companies are just building great technologies. There is step-by-step adoption coming. There is real-world use cases coming out. Real-world tokenization is a big topic, of course. The big banks are starting to accept that blockchain is something which will not go away. It is, of course, something where also with ETFs now on ETH and Bitcoin, really the mass big financial systems has accepted that this is something which will not go away and that will continue to be there. And again, I mean, as I said, I think we are just in a builder's mode, and in builder's mode, very often the exciting spikes are not there that much. Unfortunately, it also means that there is a change of people coming into the industry. At the beginning, you always have a lot of people who are, let's say, very brave and don't care about anything, and they just do it for the fun of it. Big visionaries, basically. And then once you, however, have mass adoption, more normal people, let's say, come into it. And again, there's less hype and there's less excitement. But at the same time, great stuff is being built.
Awesome. So what is was main insight from the conference?
Yeah. So, I mean, of course, there was a lot around meme coins. That is, in my opinion, something actually focused on the hype world. And this is still very much there. It, of course, has been there for a couple of years. Then it disappeared a little bit. Now it came back the last 6 months or 8 months. And that's great because, of course, eventually it brings adoption to the industry. But again, it is something where also we all should be aware that very much most of the times it is really gambling, and nobody really knows what's happening with these meme coins. And that's fine because this industry is like this, and some people will make money in this phase, and other people will basically give that money to those people who basically have been there at the right moment in time with the right projects. And then some of these projects might actually also turn into something very significant if they spend the money what they've raised significantly and in a good way. So that's mainly coins. And then there were two other topics out there which I found interesting. I think and let's say in order of real world application. So I think the one actually is network states, and that was a big topic around where a lot of people discussed around network states and what could be done potentially. Again, I'm very cautious on this. I think it's a little bit similar to the DAO hype, what we had about a year and a half ago, where everybody was then jumping on DAOs and thinking that's the next big thing. But the challenge, of course, is eventually we'll have to deal with the real world. And network states, again, is a great concept. But then if there's nobody acknowledging the reality that network state is not accepted by the other states, well, you have a great network state, but eventually it's something which is not really applicable in the real world. There was, however, the third one, which I really, really liked, and I think that is something which is becoming very relevant and very fast relevant, and that is the whole deepen movement, where we are seeing now that there's a lot of applications in gaming, in VPNs, in different types of applications. Peak, for example, of course, being one of the big players in this one, seeing that really deepen is something which is, in my opinion, a perfect example of a real world use case where blockchain technologies can play a significant role and where it's very clear where the use case will be. And we are already seeing now the first applications for it and the first, of course, hardwares and nodes and so on being built on. So that was, I think, the most relevant one. And we're excited, of course, to see what's happening with these.
So have you been a speaker on this one?
No, this time actually not. Last time I was a speaker speaking about the difference between social media and email, and why we believe, of course, that email is something which will stay and which actually has a fixed place in the communication between businesses and consumers. This time actually we weren't a speaker.
Imagine you were the speaker on the conference. So what would you tell about the vision of the EtherMail? So tell us a little bit.
Yeah, so we essentially about 2.5 years back, so we have been investing in Web3 projects for 4 or 5 years. And then we always saw that there was one big challenge of projects, which is essentially centers around communication. Of course, a lot of companies then focus on Discord and Telegram and so on, but there is really a lack of coherent communication. And actually my co-founder, Shan, came up with the idea and saying, well, what will actually happen in Web3 with email? And he came up with the idea of saying, well, let's just connect an email together with a wallet address at ethermail.io. And then all of a sudden, something very interesting happens, because the communication mechanism also becomes actually an encryption, it becomes an identification, and it becomes also a payment layer. And that actually opens up a whole world of things what can be done with this email. The easy one I always tell people is today, I mean, one thing is very important to understand is email is not necessarily, which is a communication channel focused on consumer to consumer communication, because that would be done with Telegram and with WhatsApp and with other kinds of channels. But it is actually the communication channel between companies and consumers. So there's 4.3 billion users of email worldwide. Every business in this world, so every company in this world, will have on their website a sign in with an email address, or register for the newsletter or something like this, because that is the standard choice where everybody and all the databases and stuff have been built on to communicate with end consumers. And this will stay for a very long time like this. Essentially, coming back to email in Web3, what does this mean? A simple use case is actually something what we have been working on for a while now also is a payment in an email. So, for example, you receive today, in a normal email, you would receive an invoice, for example, a PDF. You click on the PDF, you open the PDF, and you copy the IBAN number, for example. You have to go to your bank, you have to log into your bank, and the whole shebang takes you whatever 5 minutes in order to then the reason why you're paying it, and then you have to confirm it with your bank app and so on. And then eventually you've done the payment, for example. The Web3 email solution is I get the email. I actually, as I have connected my wallet, of course, to it, I will just say pay, and then that's it. So it's a one-click process, essentially, because the wallet, of course, which is on my end, which is connected to the email, holds all the information. So it holds my payment, it will hold my identification information, and that, of course, makes the whole process a lot easier. Same thing would be, for example, if I would buy, or if I want to buy with an email. So I just receive an email today. Again, it's 12 steps. I click on the email, I go on a web page, I put it in the shopping basket. In the future, I get that email and I just say buy, and then the process is a 2-step process. So there is on that front, in our opinion, a lot of opportunities to make email better. We have about 2.3 million people now using this, and we are seeing now that companies actually are starting to adopt these new use cases. And then the other one is actually focused around advertisement and, let's say, rewards for time, as we would call it. So in today's world, users don't get rewarded for looking at advertisement or actually email. It's spam, right? So essentially, I get spammed with.
Yeah, I receive a lot of these emails. Yeah.
Exactly, yeah. And that's why, that's one of the reasons, by the way, that's why email has such a bad reputation, because nobody owns email and everybody can send you an email basically. And the big providers, they sometimes filter things out, but then sometimes they filter out things also what you don't necessarily want them to filter out. So we've reversed this. We have said the email basically can only accept emails from contacts or from wallets you have interacted with. For example, if I would have bought a token from you, then basically that means that I apparently have an interest to communicate with you, and that is the cookie, let's say, and the permission that you are allowed to send me emails. That's the basic layer. And then I can opt in and say, okay, I'm also fine to actually receive other types of emails, for example, promotional emails based on my wallet information or based on my personal information. But for this, I actually get rewarded. So our model is very simple. Let's say a company like Consensus pays us $20,000. We take 10,000 of this and actually give it in the form of the email token to the user. So we reward users for their time. At the moment, it's let's say, a fixed fee more or less per user. But of course, the more the system is used, we're going to have real-time bidding. And then eventually you're going to have different remuneration for different types of products and profiles also, based on your likelihood of buying something or not buying something.
Yeah, right now, there is a trend that the messages, they become a little bit like super apps, right? So they have payments, and also like with the Telegram, you mentioned Telegram. Telegram right now is becoming like really like the main communication for at least for Web3 folks. So I'm using Telegram for everything right now. Do you think that that email will die with the time? And also considering that there is a shift in generation for like Gen Z.
Yeah, we have heard this. So the logical conclusion is, in theory, yeah, of course it will go away, right? But then the question is, which time frame are we talking about and for what? So I tell you a small secret. Fax machines, right? They officially have been dead for the last 20 years, 30 years, but they're still around. They still exist, and there's still millions of revenues generated with fax machines. Same holds true for the telephone, right? I mean, the telephone is a super old technology. Well, people still speak on the phone. You could say, well, I can do this now on WhatsApp and so on. But communication technologies die very slowly, even if they die, basically. And then, as you said correctly, the question for me is, will it die? I believe the old way of how email, for example, has been done will probably die, because there's a much better way of how you can actually generate emails or actually use emails. And that, I believe, will have a very big future, because, again, think about it a bit more abstract. Eventually, it's a communication channel, right? What is the real difference between sending an email and sending actually a mail to your through a mail protocol or through a Telegram protocol or through a WhatsApp protocol? It's all the same thing. It's just a message, right? What it boils down to, however, is, and I think that's important to understand, is it's the type and the richness of the communication, what you can choose by channel. So an email, for example, is something which, for example, in a business context is much more suitable. I can send a video, I can send rich text, I can send HTML, I can all kinds of things on a big screen, basically. And it's also something which I can very easily store and manage and so on. Whereas, for example, in Telegram, honestly, I just lose things. I just don't know anymore who that person was, which chat I actually had the information on, where was that document I was looking for. So I believe every channel has their use case. And today, it's not that the one doesn't exist anymore. It's just there's more use cases and there's more channels basically to be used. My daughter, she's using Snapchat. I don't use Snapchat, but she actually would still use email, because the bank she's interacting with is still using email. And before that bank is ever going to move to, I don't know, by the way, to what they would move to, because for sure they wouldn't move to Telegram only, because that is it's a native protocol. It's owned by somebody. And if it's switched off, let's say, then there's no more communication. Same for WhatsApp and same for others. Whereas email is not owned by anybody. So that's a big difference. And because it's not owned by anybody, every business and every consumer in the world basically can just use it. And that, of course, makes it very valuable, because it can't just go away and then tomorrow all of a sudden it's no longer there.
Your solution is more like integration. It's wallet-to-wallet communication, right? So the protocol is integrated with wallets. So do you think that wallets will become these like super messengers and super communication tools, or the messengers will integrate wallets and emails will integrate wallets?
I think it is the latter, because again, it boils down to the use case, right? So if you have ever if you have interacted with a MetaMask, for example, then you know that even already the signing of contracts, the storage of tokens and so on is cumbersome, right? Now putting email messages on top of that little pop-up thing is going to be a nightmare. So I think wallets have the big use case, which is identification, encryption, payment, basically, and that is exactly what they should be and what they're used for. They are not necessarily communication channels, because they have never been built for being a communication channel. And that's why we believe that eventually you have to connect the communication channel with the wallet. Wild thought, why wouldn't there be a Telegram wallet? I mean, by the way, there is a Telegram wallet, right? Or a WhatsApp wallet is the next thing now, because eventually, of course, payment and communication and identification will go together. So that's I'm 100% convinced of. But they will exist next to each other. Again, I use Telegram, WhatsApp, MetaMost, Slack, email, all of the above, basically, right? Because there's different people with whom I have different types of communications.
How EtherMail actually works, like for companies, for users. So what are the benefits? So
on the end user side, it is that Web3 email. Essentially, I can also have an alias, for example, gary.eth at ethermail.io. For example, we are actually going to introduce our own aliases also in the very near future. And it's an app, basically, or it also works with my normal Apple Mail or with my Gmail. It's really integrated because it's a standard internet or email protocol, basically, with some additional benefits, of course. For example, one benefit is that I can actually log in and pay and actually buy with that email. So I could go on Ether, on OpenSea, for example. I can log in with my EtherMail, and then I can buy, for example, an NFT on OpenSea. It converts the purchase actually into an email, sends it to me, scans the contract for if there's any scamming in there or anything, and says this is a safe contract, you can sign it now. I would sign it in the email, and then of course it will give me the receipt also, because that's something what I, for example, also have very often problems with. I've bought a token, I've bought something. I don't know anymore actually when and how I bought it and from whom I bought it. So it is a little bit also that communication channel and that let's say digital receipt, let's call it this way. So that's the end consumer side. And then on the business side, there's the two parts. The one I mentioned briefly is the advertisement solution, where we are sending the ads to the users and they get rewarded in the EMT. And then they can receive those EMT and then use them either in the app itself or also then actually to sell it, of course. Or then option number B for companies is our B2B mailing tool, which is very similar to a MailChimp essentially, but connected with blockchain data. So based on which wallet holds my token, for example, I can send emails directly to that token holder. And then if that token is sold to another wallet, my emails actually go to that new wallet and the old wallet doesn't receive them anymore. Then that's the big advantage, of course, of this connection between wallets and communication channel, that you really have token gated content, and you know exactly to whom you want to send your emails to, based on the information which actually is in the wallet, which is of course public.
What is your biggest use case right now in EtherMail?
So the money we are making very straightforward with advertisement. So companies buy in order to reach users, and that works very well. So we have opening rates of 30, 35, 40% sometimes. We have click rates between 20 and 25, sometimes 30%. Companies are very, very happy because we have a very focused Web3 audience, of course. And then also reaction times and then conversion into newsletters and so on are very, very good. So that is the main use case. And while we are here, I also tell people always, people have to understand how email works. Typically, you have to really build an email newsletter, and that's the most important thing. And then you have to nourish your community step by step and educate them on what you're doing, and then actually try to initiate a purchase. That's something which a lot of companies tend to forget. I always tell them, because eventually you need 4, 5, 6 different touch points in order to convince somebody to buy something.
Yeah, that's true.
Exactly. So we always tell them, guys, use our engagement booster. So build your mailing list, use that tool to then continuously send emails and updates to your audience. Get as many users as possible with a very low hurdle to subscribe to the newsletter initially. and then step by step educate your users what you're doing. And then at one point, people will buy. And the beauty about email is, very contrary to social media, it is nearly free. You have to pay a little fee to send out a lot of emails because, well, it's a cost, server cost, and so on. But other than on Facebook or Instagram or TikTok or any other channel, basically, you own the email address. So you can, whenever you want to, decide, send emails and not pay a third-party platform to actually reach those people again. And again, I think it's, if you think about it from a business standpoint, it's brilliant what the social companies have done here. First, they actually have brought other companies to tell them, bring us all your users on the platform and you can communicate with them for free and it all works and so on. And then actually they changed the algorithm that the content, what is produced by the companies, is no longer being able to be seen by the end user unless you pay and you boost your posts. Right? So they have basically sold them the drugs, made them hooked, and then afterwards every day they're selling them more drugs to reach their users.
Yeah, like I'm also right now kind of like posting a lot about podcast and trying to develop my social media. And
Yes.
I have a really lot of followers. But the thing is that at my followers that I already have as my followers, they don't see my content.
Exactly.
So and this is what is like algorithm. And actually, I was testing also. I was doing like different tests, like posting more, posting less, and even so, it's all the algorithms are really focusing on like, you need to boost and you need to pay, and it's expensive if you want to do this. Yeah, for companies, of course, they need to communicate with their audience. Great. So you're also saying that building the bridge between Web 2 and Web 3. Can you elaborate a little bit?
Yes, of course. So, but before one thing before because we have actually developed a solution for this problem of social media. What you actually can do with our B2B tool, you can actually put in your Twitter handle or your LinkedIn handle or whatever, and then say, generate me an email newsletter from the last 4 posts, for example. It will automatically generate that email newsletter and send it to your audience. So you don't have to replicate the content. You can essentially ensure that content, what you actually have generated already with a lot of effort on social media, is reused and then actually really sent to your users. Anyways, building the Web 2 to Web 3 bridge, it goes a little bit the direction of what I said before, in the logic of how email works and what it is used for. The beauty of email is 4.3 billion people are using it. Everybody knows how email works. It's very straightforward. It's not complicated. Everybody can use it. My grandma could basically use it. And that's why I believe it's a perfect mechanism and a way of actually how to bring people into the Web3 world. Or simply put, it's much easier to connect a wallet to an email, which somebody already knows how email works, than to teach them how actually a wallet works. And that's essentially exactly what our approach is. That's building that bridge. So essentially, if you now go, for example, on EtherMail, you can sign in with your Gmail. With signing in the email with a Gmail, you can either select, I have a wallet, and just import your wallet, or you basically say, I don't have a wallet. In the background, we create a wallet for you. At the same time, we create the EtherMail address for you. And then your email or your Gmail essentially really becomes a wallet, let's say. And then again, if the flows and what I've described to you earlier is actually focused on the email communication channel, then people can have a lot easier time to onboard into the Web3 world than today, because you can make a lot more information available through this rich communication channel than you can do, for example, through a wallet.
What about the privacy and security?
Yeah, so on our end, every email is encrypted, so we can't read the emails. And by the way, we don't even have the key. So even if somebody would come to us and say, listen, open up your database and give us the encryption key, we don't have it. So it's actually a private public key between which is in the wallet of the user, and then the public key basically which is on the blockchain, and then between those two, they basically in the device of the user that actually does the encryption. So we don't know what's in the email, full stop.
Okay. Do you think that people in general are ready for Web3 email?
The truth is this, at the moment, this is a very much focused on Web3 world. So the Web3 world is ready for it. I mean, we're getting thousands of signups every day. So they understand it, of course, because they come from that world. The use case for the Web2 world is something which we still have to build. So what we are propagating, or what we're telling people is getting into Web3 is as easy as creating a new email. So that's exactly what we are pushing. And then people, of course, do it. But I think the biggest challenge what we have in general in Web3 is that there is not enough end user facing and consumer facing products out there. The reason, let's say, to go into Web3 is still missing. There's some interesting examples. I mean, for example, the sweat coin, we spoke to these guys actually just last week. I think that's super interesting. And that's essentially what we need to get. We need to get to more consumer facing products in Web3. I think gaming is a great opportunity for this. For example, also there's now virtual VPNs and so on. So you can very easily now onboard into Web3 with EtherMail, but now you actually have to get more and more use cases in the Web3 world for the people for a reason to actually onboard into Web3.
Yeah, that's a big challenge. That's a big challenge to the industry. But crypto is moving up, right? So is it a good time to launch a token as a project? I know that in June this year you launched EtherMail token. So is it a good timing?
So goes a little bit back to the earlier discussion, bull market, bear markets, and so on. There is never the right and there's never the wrong time, I would say, because in last year in the bear market, everybody would tell you, yeah, but now it's really difficult to launch token. Nobody was launching token. Then actually in, I don't know, May, June, July, everybody was launching token. Then they said, yeah, but now it's way too much competition. You can't launch token now. Then they said, yeah, but now it's actually the summer pause. You can't really do it now. So I've heard so many of these discussions. I think if you have a token, you have a project, you should just go out whenever you think you're ready to go out. And then there's some homework to be done that you have to ensure that actually a token launch is a successful token launch. And anyways, by the way, a token launch is just one point in time. The work really starts afterwards. Like the IPO is just one moment in time, but the real work basically starts afterwards. And I think the preparation, the execution, and the post TGE work is a lot more important than the question of when is the right moment.
How did you choose the right moment for EtherMail?
We really, let's say, did a reverse logic. We looked at what needs to be done and when are we ready to launch it, and then actually we just launched it. And for us, it was very clear from the beginning we wanted to have a token which is regulated right from the beginning, and we played it by the books to ensure that we wouldn't be in a sketchy or weird jurisdiction. For example, we on purpose actually chose Liechtenstein, which is part of Europe, of course, which is also part of MiCA, which was super important for us. They actually was a blueprint for MiCA in Europe. So I would say probably that token law is one of the most advanced laws we have globally. So we focused on getting this one right. We focused on getting the approval from the authorities, the legal reviews, the tax reviews, everything what's connected to it. Because if you plan a long-term project, you can only launch the token once, and then either you do it properly or you do it wrongly, and then it's very difficult to actually rectify this problem if you have basically done it wrongly. So we've done this from the beginning. That just took time, and then basically at the same time, the whole token design, we did some modeling on how the token would evolve over time. And really also focus very much on building utility into the token and ensure that there is a logic why there is a token. Because very often I see a lot of projects where I say, why do you have a token? There's no reason to have a token. What you're essentially doing is a crowdfunding campaign and hoping that people are stupid enough to buy something of your token and then speculate with it, which is fine sometimes, but then basically very often, again, there is no reason to have a token. Whereas in our logic, actually, there is a very, very important reason to have the token. It's the core of the business model. And as I said, so this took time, and then we were ready in, I think, March or April or something like this. And then we actually started to speak with the exchanges. We already had done actually discussions with the exchanges and so on. And then you essentially look at where it's possible to list, you discuss conditions and so on. The exchange listing process is a complicated one, I would say, because you don't really know why somebody wants to list you or doesn't want to list you, and then it's a yes and it's a no, and then maybe, and then it's the price is not right. So that was actually a lot of a frustrating or difficult process, I would say, to really get the right listing partners together. Eventually, I think we were very, very happy of how we basically did it. And then really the work begins around creating momentum and FOMO somehow around the launch to ensure that you have a proper token launch. And I mean, in our case, I think we had on the first day nearly $25 million trading volume. The price went up from 0.05 to nearly 0.4 actually, so 8x basically. So we're very happy with basically what happened and so on. People made money and so on. But then also, by the way, very normal, things go down, right? Because people are jumping basically from one token to the next. Then it's typical this, then it goes down. In our case, it went more or less to where we started, a little bit low. Actually, it went to where we started. Then actually we did our big first token drop because we essentially gave people the EMT of the early adopters as base of the revenue share, basically what we're doing, or buying back the EMT. Then the price dropped again, and then actually we started buying back also EMT from the advertising revenues what we're generating, because that's part of the core model. And now the price has been going up again, and now we basically see that there's spikes going up step by step, and then long term we just believe the token will basically generate more value and then basically rise in price over time.
I have many questions, follow-up questions for this conversation. I think it's super interesting. So how long did the whole process took?
Yeah, so we actually started in July 23, I think, June, July 23, and then we were ready in February, March, I would say, this year. So about 6 to 7 months, more or less.
What are the first steps that you took?
So token design was really the first one, really to think, okay, what is a token supposed to do? Which are the players in this universe? So what role do companies play? What role do users play? Why should somebody buy the token? How is the token flow? What role would market makers play, and so on? So we spent a lot of time on token design. And also, of course, what is the utility of the token? That's very important, because if there's no utility, well, then you don't have a token, a reason for a token. And then essentially that moved into tokenomics. Yeah. So is this a limited supply? Is there staking involved? Is this a variable supply? Is there burning? There's no burning. So a lot of these questions you have to go through essentially. And then step by step, you define, I think at the end we had a tokenomics deck, which was, I think, nearly 100 pages, where everything was specified, yeah, from legal to tax to design to partners to launch strategy to how's the distribution amongst the people and so on. The vesting, for example, we introduced a very innovative milestone-based vesting schedule because sorry, we always thought that most of the projects actually do time-based vesting, which in my opinion doesn't make any sense, because essentially if you think about token as a monetary means which helps to manage or to, let's say, helps that an economy runs, like money in a monetary system basically does, then actually you need more money if the economy is growing, you need less money if the economy is shrinking. So we have said basically, essentially, our economy is based on users. The more users we have, the more token essentially we need. So we actually decided that we're going to focus launching and the vesting of the token on milestone based of users. So for example, founders and investors and everybody are just vesting based on user milestones, up to 21 million users, active users basically. Because otherwise you have a lot of token in the market which is not used, and then the token price goes down essentially. So we have a very strong connection with this. But there's a lot of other stuff in there where you really have to, and the more you think about it, you realize, okay, here's something, there's something, there's something. We looked at a lot of different token projects also, what could be learned from them. Took some people also on board who actually had done some token launches on Binance and so on. And try to ensure that basically we didn't do the mistakes they already had done before.
So about the mistakes. So what are the typical mistakes? Because you're also an investor, right, in Web3 projects. So what are the typical mistakes that you have seen in tokenomics or in the launch of the token? Well, except the utility, obviously, like utility of the token is the most important, but all the other.
Yeah. So one is the question around circulating supply. So how do token go into possession of people basically? How do you control supply? There is that whole logic of where people say, oh, you're just going to make a huge airdrop and so on. The truth is if you do an airdrop, 80% of the people to whom you do the airdrop to will sell the token in the first 3 days after you've done the airdrop. So people think this is it's a user acquisition strategy which is sustainable, but it's not. So the token, or let me put it this way, one step back, is eventually the token is a reflection of how good your business model is. So we look less on token and token design. We look first on business model. Okay, is there a business model which long term can generate revenues independent of a token, or is it just focused on the token? Because if the business model is only working if there's a token, or let me say, if it's only working if the token is increasing in price and you find enough stupid people to buy the token, then there's no business model. So we are always saying, okay, the token is the oil which greases the machine, but it's not the machine. So let's first look at, is there a machine which can work? And then, okay, the token will be the grease in the thing, and which also gives liquidity, of course, to investors. And then basically look at a lot of the different elements, as I said, supply, circulation, holders, vesting, and all these other things to then basically make sure that this is something which is sensible. And I mean, we always get very, very scared, for example, if then there's a unlocking of founders on TGE or something like this, right? So, for example, we haven't sold any tokens because it's clear TGE is not a liquidity event for founders. It's actually an event which makes the token tradable and then basically visible to the outside. But a generation of let's say of flows of people who have the token initially and investors and so on comes a lot later when you really have a business model. So again, we look at business model and then token comes afterwards.
So you mentioned several things. So one of the things is how to properly engage community, how to properly also engage the KOLs.
Yes.
So how is it like not to make your token launch is like the dead point?
Yeah, so we spend a significant amount of money on KOLs on token launch, but we also, of course, used our marketing platform because we have the users. So we, of course, sent them emails about the token launch and everything. And then we also used Twitter and we also used Telegram. We tried to not branch out into too many communication channels because what our experience always is a little bit, if you then have Instagram and Facebook and Discord and so on, you just lose a lot of people along the way. You can also, let's say, force a little bit people sometimes into one communication channel. And for us, it has worked quite well. Eventually, it's like an orchestra, and you have to play the orchestra with different channels having different logic. KOLs have their logic because they can tell a story and they can basically generate hype around something, and they can also bring users. A Telegram has a logic because you basically can very fast communicate to people, and then people have the ability to react and so on. And it's, as you said before, it's a great channel. But also email has their logic because you can communicate a lot deeper information basically, and also it's a longer lasting information, let's say, because an email is typically something which is not. You don't send it and then a minute later you read it and you have a reaction basically, right? But it's going to sit in your inbox, and then 2 days later, 3 days later, 4 days later, you might read it basically and then forward it. So it's a much slower but a much broader communication mechanism, and that's why also it has its place, of course, in the communication journey. And CRM is something which is for us super important, which we regularly do.
So have you used the vesting logic with key opinion leaders as well?
Yeah, so we actually chose to pay opinion leaders. So we just paid them in stable coins, essentially. We had one deal basically with one where we, based on performance, are giving them token with the vesting, of course, also. I don't think there's right or wrong. I don't know. You see, we just chose to pay them basically because we had the feeling that it's straightforward. You get paid for a service in order to promote, explain to users the token. There is no hidden interest basically. If they want to, they can just buy the token on the market if they believe in it, or if they don't believe it, they don't basically. And that's it basically. But as I said, there's no right or wrong. We could have done it also in token basically. I don't know.
So you raised already 9 million, right, in several rounds. So also some of the investors, that is Greenfield, Fabric Ventures, Draper Associates. So very good investors. So have you raised also money with that token launch?
Yeah, we also raised some money with the token launch. So because we had a lot of demand on the initial TGE, we also sold a bit of money into the market. We could have done probably more, but we didn't because we just felt also it's good for the people to generate revenues and upside for them. But of course, it also is a way of how to generate cash for the company. Again, it's for the company, it's not for us founders. Because eventually the business needs the money, and that's the most important.
You mentioned something that about like listing on different platforms, right? So how did you choose? How did you choose exchanges? What was the logic there? Is it important really for the token launch?
Yeah, definitely it is important for the token launch. There's different types of liquidity on different exchanges, and on some exchanges you get only after you have been on other exchanges. So Binance, of course, is the biggest exchange. For them this year has been very much focused on meme coins because they apparently brought the biggest hype in around this. So they haven't been really focused on a lot of other projects. Very difficult to get into it, but of course it's a super important exchange. And then you have a lot of other exchanges, basically, which are more tier two, which are of course the KuCoins, the BitGets, the Gates, and so on. And from these, basically, we spoke to most of them, and then eventually chose the exchanges we had initially, which was Gate, Maxi, and then Bitpanda. Bitgate, BitGet. And then actually we just recently launched on Bitpanda and on Coins DCX, India's largest exchange. And now we're in discussion also for other listings on other big exchanges. But it's not super important to be on a lot of exchanges, I would say. It's better to actually be on the right exchanges. We had another 15 exchanges who wanted to launch us, and we chose consciously not to be on there, because it doesn't necessarily have a big volume very often. It just distracts you. You have to put right market making liquidity, and sometimes can be counterproductive. So we looked again at trying to be on reputable good exchanges, where then also now there's enough volume and so on, and that's where we've been focusing on.
What would be one advice that you would give to a founder that is launching right now the token?
I mean, I guess it has to do with number one, on making sure that you are on the right exchanges, so that you early on have discussions with exchanges who potentially can list you, because it just takes time. So it's not, oh, now I want to list and then next week it's happening. No, it takes time. It can take 3 to 6 months essentially, because they have their own dynamic and their own time and so on. That's number one. I think number two, a core measure why exchanges want to list you is actually your social media engagement and your audience, essentially. So the more users you have, the more interesting a project is for any exchange. And then, I mean, the last one is probably around the tokenomics, to ensure that there's not a logic of just one big airdrop and then basically you hope that everything happens from there, but that you really have a model where the token has a utility, essentially.
Many founders, as you mentioned, right? So they are launching the token and they consider this as like a success story. So for you, as a serial entrepreneur who had already exits, right? So the investor as well, how do you measure the success of the Web3 project as a founder and as an investor?
The token is again, it's just one moment in time, again, it's a question of how reliable and how sustainable the token long term is. Also, of course, liquidity of the token is super important, because I mean, if you launch a token and there's liquidity of whatever $2,000 per day, well, you can have the highest token price in the world. It doesn't matter, because you can't sell it basically. But eventually, it boils down to the business model. I mean, let's be honest about it. It's. I don't think that the token launch itself is the business model, or is the moment in time where you can be happy and then drive around in a Ferrari. It's a financing event. It's the same with an IPO, right? It's just a financing event. What we are here to is to build a business, and to build a business means you have revenues and you have costs, and eventually you have hopefully profits. And then if the profits are bigger and bigger and bigger over time, well, then you have a very good business. And then you basically are able to sell the business or IPO it, or just keep it as a cash flow generating machine or whatever. But you have to have a business model where you're making or generating revenues. And if you don't have that, then you don't have a real business model, because a business model which is just focused on you selling token to the market and hoping that the market price will go up, it's not a business model. I'm sorry.
The business model and the business that is generating constantly and consistently the revenue,
Yes.
right?
Absolutely. Super
Awesome. We have right now like also the entertainment part. Are you ready?
Yes, sure. Go.
So I have prepared some of the questions. So here is the cards. And there is a
Aha, okay,
question.
interesting.
Yeah, there is
Okay.
questions. And there is blockchain actually here. I designed it all myself, by the way.
Nice, very good.
So
Now
there
it
is
becomes interesting.
54 cards, 52 questions, and we have
Ooh,
also 2 jokers. Yeah.
okay.
Until now, in season 2, no one actually pulled out the joker. But okay, let's see
Okay.
how it will be with you. So let's just pull certain questions. Well, in real life, if it would be you would be the one who will be doing
Yeah,
this.
I
But
can. I'm trying to.
right now, I will just do this you will see, and you say to me stop, and then I pull the top one, so
Okay.
you can, and then you answer the question.
Okay, fine.
So don't take it seriously, the
No,
questions.
good.
So this is like more a fun part, and some questions are kind of fun. Sometimes it's more personal as well. So let's do this. Okay, so I'm starting.
Okay. Stop. Now.
Okay. So this one is more professional. So what is the average?
Number of meetings you take up in a single day. Oh, wow, that would be a lot, actually. I would say between 6 to 8, probably, meetings per day I'm doing at the moment.
Wow, how long are they usually?
30 minutes. I try to keep them to maximum 30 minutes, 25 better, because otherwise you don't get work done afterwards or in between, let's say. But it's a lot of calls and meetings, interviews, and so on. But it's a lot of work, basically, what I'm doing.
Yeah, I was working with government funds, with Portuguese government funds, and to be honest, sometimes Portuguese take a lot of time, to have a meeting. So it's like
Yeah.
1 hour of meeting. So
Yeah.
one thing was for me once I started working for myself, like one thing is like 20 minutes meetings.
Yes.
So
Exactly.
instead of 1 hour, 1 meeting, I have 3 meetings. So
Of
that
course
was
you do.
yeah.
I agree.
Yeah,
There's
it's
no
much
point
more
in having one
efficient.
on you. Yeah, of course, I agree. You might almost you don't need more than 20, 30 minutes. You know what needs to be done next.
Yeah. All right. So next one.
Great, stop.
Okay. Okay. So what is the most adventurous thing that you ever done?
Whew. Well, there's a couple. Actually, probably jumping from the Sky Tower in Las Vegas from 320 meters. That was probably pretty adventurous, I would say. That was interesting.
With the parachute?
Actually, it's kind of a bungee thing, so you just jump basically. But it's
I know that one. I know that one. Yes, yes, yes.
yeah,
Oh
yeah.
my
But
God.
it's pretty deep, I have to say. But it was fun.
Do you have kids?
Yeah, 3.
3. Have you been like worried about them
No,
when you've
no. I
been
mean,
jumping?
no. I have an outlook on these things that I think you have to have a bit of trust in God and in the universe. So it was fine. It was a bit of a thing to take that step, of course. But afterwards, it was fine. It was actually a lot of fun. I really enjoyed it. I wanted to do it again. It was really cool.
Wow, cool. So jumping off the cliff as an entrepreneur, right, to different markets, and also jumping off the how's it this Vegas building? How is it called? Do you remember?
In Las Vegas, I think it's a Sky Tower. I think it's called the Sky Tower.
Yeah. Oh, awesome. All right. So another question.
Yes. Stop.
Okay. Oh, that is interesting as well.
If you could, it's a bit unclear. If you could enhance your body or brain with technologies, what capabilities would you choose to have? Ooh, whoa, a lot. I mean, I think flying would be quite cool. So to be able to fly, I think that would be something I really would love to do. I mean, of course, that idea of AI planted in your brain and being able to access all kinds of information on the spot. I think that's something which is not that far away potentially. But then, of course, if everybody has it, then also it becomes a bit boring, perhaps. I don't know. So I think personally, being able to fly would be quite cool.
Why not teleportation? I think teleportation is really cool. You can just be in like 1 second
Yeah,
somewhere.
yeah, that could also be good. Yeah, it's like a jumper or something like this, right? But I have to admit, I enjoy the ride very often, also going somewhere. So the way is also something which is interesting. And then if you can fly, I mean, that would be again very cool, right? So yeah, but it would both serve its purpose.
Awesome, awesome. All right, so let's do the another one.
Stop.
Okay, so oh,
What person, dead or alive, would you choose to be trapped with on the desert island? Good question. On a desert island. Ooh, desert island. Ooh, that's a tough one. Ooh, that means there's no water and nothing, so you're probably going to die together. Oh, I think if that's the case, if you're going to die, probably Jesus. I think that's quite helpful because then at least you have somebody close to God, and that's actually a better thing than, I don't know, having Einstein or something like this around.
do you remember this was on National Geographic, the survival TV show?
Yeah. I
There
think I've
was
seen it.
this
Yeah.
guy.
Yeah, I've seen it.
Yeah, so maybe this guy.
Yeah. It's true, exactly. Yeah. He would actually be very helpful. Yeah. Well, if I would have the technology ability to fly, I wouldn't care, right? Because I could just leave.
I would like to ask you like the last question. So what, how, how the founders can identify the biggest opportunities right now in blockchain? How they can find the next big thing?
The good thing is that eventually nearly everything is something which has been there, or most of the time has been there, just in a different form. So every technological innovation which there is something which is just doing something which has been there before with a new technology or with a new process, essentially. Being it the phone or writing a letter or an email, whatever. It's just an evolution of technology, essentially. So, and we are actually doing this. So if I would actually recommend this something to a founder, I would say, well, look at today's Web2 world, at the business models which are there, which are working well, which are making good amounts of money, and think about how would this business model look in the Web3 world if you combine blockchain and AI into it, because I think it's both something which is very closely connected. Actually, it's three things. It's blockchain, it's AI, and it's robotics. So these three things are, of course, the big theme. So I would recommend to any founder, look at existing business models, what's good today, and then ask yourself these three questions: what would blockchain, what would AI, what would robotics add to this, and how could a business model work or look like in this new world? And then you can decide, okay, is this something I would love to build, or which makes me excited about it or not?
Awesome. Thank you so much for this fantastic interview and so many interesting insights about how to launch the token and the future of the email. That was very interesting. So I will leave for the audience below all the links. So I will prompt also to see the links, to know a little bit about EtherMail and test it also as a user. So that is very, very, very important as well. And of course, subscribe to this channel and like the video and share if you think this video is very useful for your audience as well. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Rita. Great having you actually being here on the show, and thank you very much for listening, everybody. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Ciao.